So what's up people, and welcome to the Chapter 3 discussion of Choujin X. So Chapter 3 came out a couple of days ago, and as always I will leave a link to this chapter that's currently being shown on the publisher's official website, Manga Plus, for free to the North American audience. So if you're interested, go take a look at it before they pull this chapter back. Okay, so Chapter 3, if you recall in Chapter 2, we went in a completely different direction and went away from what I thought were the main characters in Chapter 1, Azuma and Tokio, and we got an introduction back to Ellie, which I thought died in the first chapter, and then she came out again in the second chapter. Well, Chapter 3 goes back to the story of Tokio and Azuma. And we go back a little bit in time. If you recall, in the end of Chapter 2, we see Tokio feeling sorry for himself because he can't turn back to his human form. Well, we start off a little bit before that, and the scene starts out a little bit after what we saw in Chapter 1, where they were about to confront that bully. The guy called Johnny Kiyoshi, who has that elastic power. So this happens right after that confrontation, and we don't know what happened during that confrontation, so we kind of are left to guess. I'm not sure if we ever will find out, considering what happens later on in this chapter, and to most extent it really doesn't matter. What we know is that whatever happened after they transformed into the Choujin, they were able to get away from Johnny Kiyoshi. And we see that Azuma has passed out, and Tokio is carrying him along down the dark streets of the night. And eventually Azuma does regain his conscience and wonders what happens. Now Tokio answers with a very interesting answer. He doesn't know what happened either. All he knows is that he transformed, and the next thing he knew, he was carrying Azuma on his back. And so I guess as a reader, we're left wondering what happened the same way the main characters are left wondering what happened. And it's at that time that Azuma for the first time realizes what Tokio has transformed into. And what's interesting about this is that Azuma kind of changes in personality. Now, one thing I should mention is that if you recall in Chapter 2, I kind of mentioned that Chapter 2 was much more kind of comical, and this was a little bit off from the Sui Ishida type of story, which is a lot darker. Well, in Chapter 3, we come back to what I think is very iconic of Sui Ishida's writing style. This is a lot darker. It goes into human character, human interaction, and human conflict. And once Azuma finds out what happened to Tokio, he kind of changes a little bit. If you recall in Chapter 1, he was this upbeat personality. It was Tokio who was very closed in, right? And Azuma was much more open, much more charismatic. But once he sees what Tokio has transformed into, he doesn't have that same personality anymore. Tokio was about to take Azuma to the doctors to see if there was anything wrong with him after he passed out. But Azuma gets off and just says, no, I'll go home. And you should too, because you have transformed, and if anybody sees you, you're going to be in trouble. Now, this sounds like it's very caring, but the way he says it is quite cold, almost as if he's brushing Tokio off. And so Tokio does listen to him and goes home, but starts wondering, what's going to happen to him. This is very similar to the situation that Ken Kaneki was in when he turned into a ghoul for the first time and he wasn't sure what to do. In this case, of course, Tokio has turned into that raven beast monster and he can't turn back. And because of that, his life is now kind of turned upside down. He has to pretend like he's sick so that he could take time off from school. He's trying to sneak around in the house so that people won't see what's happened to him. And even the rudimentary things are very difficult to do, such as eating dinner. And so he's really starting to freak out. And typically when that happens, he would rely on Azuma. But Azuma is not available. In fact, when he called Azuma really bit back on him and said, why can't you solve your own problems by yourself? Just get out of my hair. And of course, this is very uncharacteristic of Azuma, and that freaks Tokio out even more. But the question is why is Azuma acting like that? what happened during that Choujin transformation, and why would it change Azuma's personality? Well, one possibility is that he was freaked out and disgusted by the transformation that happened with Tokyo. One other possibility is that whatever Azuma has transformed into, and we're not privy of knowing what that is, maybe it was something even more hideous than what Tokyo has transformed into. It's just that he still retains his human appearance. And maybe that's why he's kind of shutting himself away, because he's not disgusted by Tokyo. Maybe he's disgusted by himself. We don't know. We know that he was pretty open to transforming into a Choujin so that he could save the world in much greater ways. But maybe something has happened that makes him question whether he can do so, now that he knows what his powers are. It'll be interesting to see what is driving Azuma toward a darker persona. Now, the rest of the chapter goes back to Johnny Kiyoshi, and we find out that he is now caught by that person who gave him the serum in the first place. He gave him more than one serum, and it was during that time, of course, that Tokyo and Azuma was able to get their hands on the serum that Johnny Kiyoshi had. And so this gentleman has come back, and he has kind of trapped Johnny Kiyoshi and is asking him what happened to the other two serums and who has become the Choujins. And he's basically pinned him down and threatened that if he doesn't tell him, he will kill him. Now, this is where we find out something very interesting about Johnny Kiyoshi. We thought that he was very much a bully and a thug in the first chapter, and of course when he transformed into the Choujin, he did it basically to go after Azuma and Tokyo. Well, what's interesting is in this chapter, he's somewhat holding back their identities, kind of protecting them. And his statement is that he knows enough about people that whether he tells this guy or not, he knows that this guy is going to kill him. So he's basically giving the guy the third finger and telling him to get lost. So, as Johnny Kiyoshi expected, the chapter ends with this guy basically taking out Johnny Kiyoshi. So now we kind of understand that this guy is going to be on the hunt for Azuma and Tokyo. We still don't know what Azuma's power is. We don't know what's changed Azuma's personality. And the last interesting question is, Tokyo and Azuma and Johnny Kiyoshi all became Choujins by taking a serum, a power drug, right? And one possibility is all the Choujins in the world were receivers of this power drug. But then that doesn't really explain Ellie, who never really knew that she was a Choujin. Where did her powers come from? It's almost as if those came naturally. Now, one possibility is that it may be like the situation with the boys. If you remember the live-action series The Boys, they also had a serum that gave them superpowers, and some of those superheroes didn't know that, and they found out because their parents secretly gave them the serum. So maybe Ellie received the power drug in an indirect manner that she didn't know about, and it's only recently that it's triggering. And why is that other Choujin who also has smoke powers going after her? We don't know yet, but maybe he knew to target her because he knew about her Choujin powers even though she didn't. We don't know yet. There's a lot of questions opening up more than explanations, and it'll be interesting to see where this goes along. But in any case, that is the Chapter 3 discussion for Choujin X. I don't know when Chapter 4 will come out, but when it does, I will upload another video, and I hope you join me at that time. And until then, happy manga reading, and as always, Jaya, nice day everyone.